Hello, my friend. Today's Wednesday, October 29th, 2025. It's been about 2 weeks since you and I last had an opportunity to get together and have a conversation about Bitfarms and about Canaan. So I was hopeful that I might have the opportunity to get together with you today and to share some really exciting news, right? That, hey, Bitfarms has acquired a customer, and we're going to go over the deal structure, and we're going to talk about the revenue, and we're going to talk about when some of these milestone payments might come in, and hey, what other paths and opportunities Bitfarms may have to acquire some new customers in addition to the one that I was hoping we could talk about today. But lamentably, we're still not quite at that point. It's almost as if, though, we're still at a pre-revenue stage as it relates to the HPC AI side of the Bitfarms business. And, hey, it is what it is. Bitfarms, of course, did very opportunistically and very successfully raise a bunch of money. And by a bunch of money, I'm not saying, hey, they raised 10, 15, $20 million. I'm talking about numbers that are in excess of $500 million or so. It's a really remarkable achievement. It's not the achievement that I would have preferred to see, because I think it's always more interesting when money can come in as a result of a customer deciding to move forward with a business relationship and providing a portion of that money, right, as an upfront payment to be followed by additional milestone payments. But I'm also sensitive and, to the fact that, and realistic about the fact that, hey, like the, shares of Bitfarms were trading up quite a bit. And so, when a company like Bitfarms, which traditionally, I think one could make a very, fair argument, its main source of income generation, maybe not strictly speaking income generation, but its main source of funding, right, tends to be, be it like selling stock to the public or, maybe raising capital as a result of like a loan, right? In this case, it's a convertible senior note. Like this is a very, I think it shouldn't be that surprising that Bitfarms succeeded in doing what it has, I think, very successfully done for the vast majority of its existence, right? Which is to be able to go into the capital markets, be it the equity markets or the debt markets, raise a bunch of money, live off that money for a period of time, right? Invest in capital expenditures, be it Bitcoin mining machine upgrades, be it all kinds of different things, right? And to then sort of coast along and, generate some revenue, right, as a result of course, right, Bitcoin mining, but then ultimately have to go back into the capital markets and raise a bunch of money again to then repeat the process of, sort of like coasting along on that money for a period of time. Now, I will say, I think there's a meaningful opportunity that there could potentially be sort of a bit of a break with that pattern. Particularly if there were to be an HPC AI customer that were to emerge to, decide, hey, we want to go ahead and do business with Bitfarms as it relates to an HPC AI data center. And hey, if you can structure that so that it's a win-win for both parties, and, the major win for Bitfarms could, I think, arguably be that you'd have a material, substantive source of revenue coming into the company, and you'd have the potential, at least, for the company to sort of fund maybe all or a part of its future operations based on the money that it's actually bringing in from a customer. Now, that's not something that traditionally Bitfarms, or really many, if not any, Bitcoin mining-centric business has been able to do. At least not that I'm aware of, right? There has typically been this sort of like, wash, rinse, repeat cycle of going into the capital markets, raising a bunch of money, be it through equity, be it through debt, making the best of that money, right, as possible, but ultimately having to go back into the markets and do it all over again because there's just not any money being made, or at least not sufficient amounts of money being made to, in a meaningful way, reinvest that capital, towards expanding operations or otherwise, right? So, hey, we're sort of at that inflection point now. As I sort of alluded to, I had been hoping that I could speak to you more, I think, concretely about a customer, right, that Bitfarms would have acquired, right, in conjunction with raising $500 plus million. But that doesn't appear yet to be the case. That's not to say that we may not get a very meaningful or interesting news release as we get closer and closer and closer to earnings, right, in November. I think that there's a very real chance that there could be some noteworthy news that comes out ahead of that particular earnings call. And if not, hey, you never know that something might occur in the month of December. And if nothing occurs in the month of December, I will have saved myself from having to eat a bowl of broccoli on this broadcast. If you don't follow me on X, please do so. I am a bit more active there, and I made a little bit of an informal promise that I do intend to keep, that if Bitfarms were to announce that they have a customer, I don't really care if it's for Washington, for Pennsylvania, for some warehouse in Quebec somewhere. It doesn't matter. If they find a customer that's an HPC AI customer on or before December 31st, 2025, I will eat a small bowl of broccoli, broccoli, I should pronounce it correctly, right here on the broadcast as I have a chat with you. Listen, I'm optimistic, okay? I really am. I'm optimistic that something will come of this. I do seem to recall either Paul Prager, right, over at TerraWolf, or maybe it was Nazar Khan, again, over at TerraWolf, saying something to the effect that maybe about half of the proposed HPC AI sites that are being talked about by Bitcoin mining companies that are attempting to make this pivot into HPC AI, only about half of those sites are ever going to result in any sort of customer showing up. That's pretty profound. And I tend to listen with extra intensity when they speak, because those guys have been in the energy market for a very, very long time. And, they're not speaking from a place of hypotheticals. I mean, they, look at the Lake Mariner facility, right, which is a TerraWolf facility in upstate New York, has at this point two phenomenal top 1% HPC AI customers. TerraWolf itself, right, a portion of the company is going to be owned by Google. I mean, we're talking about people who... Many people may not know this, right? But when at the time Marathon, right, was starting up, so to speak, right, in earnest, their Montana facility was actually built by the team at TerraWolf. That's a sort of a slightly lesser known fact, just because, again, the guys at TerraWolf had and continue to have a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge and real world familiarity with the energy markets and with a lot of what we're talking about today. So I am a little bit haunted by the thought that what if, for whatever reason, Panther Creek is maybe not going to be one of the sites that ever gets developed. Well then, okay, great. The good news is maybe the Washington site will be one of the sites. See what I mean? So Bitfarms does have a couple of different ways to win. I don't know the 17 megawatts in Washington is going to be the kind of announcement that, is going to result in a multi-billion-dollar contract. Okay, I'm just keeping it real. I think that would likely have to come from the roughly 1 gigawatt pipeline here in Pennsylvania. But nevertheless, an announcement regarding the roughly, I think it's like 17 megawatts in Washington, I think if nothing else, it would help validate Bitfarms as being a bona fide player then in the HPC AI landscape, right? As opposed to a mere sort of like aspirational type of company that's attempting to pivot into that sector. Okay, now, something that Bitfarms published, I believe, about a year ago or so, I think it was like November of last year. They basically published, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's kind of like a prediction as to where, like hash prices might be for Bitcoin mining, where the price of Bitcoin might be, where the network hash rate might be. And the premise of that particular portion of the presentation back in November of 2024, if I'm not mistaken, was to basically try to explain, hey, this is why we want to pivot towards HPC AI. And this has a lot to do not only with Bitfarms, but also with Canaan, which I promised we'd talk a little bit about. So basically, Bitfarms took the position, hey, 2025 is going to be the year in which ideally, right, the price of Bitcoin will do really well, hash prices will do really well, and then if cyclical patterns repeat themselves, right? Cyclical Bitcoin patterns repeat themselves. 2026 would be a year where you wouldn't really necessarily have a whole lot to look forward to as it relates to the price of Bitcoin or hash prices or Bitcoin mining as a whole. And that is why there is such an emphasis on HPC AI, right? That's like the rationale for this pivot. Okay. What if Bitcoin, because of, for example, the fact that there is more institutional adoption than ever before, the U.S. Federal Reserve is indicating they're going to continue dropping interest rates. Interest in Bitcoin is probably at an all-time high. What if those factors all combine to create a scenario in which you have something of a Bitcoin super cycle, where instead of having to prepare for a crypto winter that would ostensibly begin sometime in 2026 and maybe last through 2027, and then, kind of come to an end as we get closer to the next halving event, we'd actually see the price of Bitcoin continue to accelerate. Hash prices, which, by the way, have just been completely obliterated. I mean, they haven't really been that good. We'd see a meaningful turnaround in them. Maybe we'd see them go up by 30, 40, 50%. And that then, if that were to happen, we'd break the, for lack of a better way to say it, the traditional, roughly 4-year cycle with Bitcoin and crypto winters and things like that. It's a big deal for Bitfarms because if that were to happen, meaning that there were to be a break in the cycle and we were to see a meaningful material boost in hash prices, that would be really great because Bitfarms, lest we forget, still has a very meaningful Bitcoin mining operation. Okay. For Canaan, it would be particularly important given the fact their entire business is reliant on Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining economics, right? So let's talk about Canaan. They've had a really good run. And as I've shared on X, again, I'll mention it again. If you don't follow me on X, there's a link in the description of today's broadcast. Check out my X account and definitely give me a follow. Or at least, just informally check out what I'm posting there because I do post a lot of stuff that you may find relevant as it relates to Bitfarms, Canaan, and other very tightly related topics. Canaan, I think, really has to see there be a break in the pattern, right, of a 4-year cycle because if we go into a crypto winter, it's not going to be good for Canaan. Okay, I've seen people posting stuff like, yeah, Canaan's going to 100. Like, yeah, maybe, but Bitcoin better be at like $500,000 with hash prices dramatically higher than where they are now, right? I don't think I don't think Canaan gets to $100 a share, if Bitcoin is nosediving into a crypto winter and hash prices are just disintegrating along with the price of Bitcoin. So I was very clear in sharing where my exit points would be for Canaan. And more than anything else, hey, I'm just happy that Canaan regained listing compliance with NASDAQ. That's a really big deal. As I said before, Canaan was really good to me when I, way back in the day, was kind of getting involved in a little bit of Bitcoin mining here and there, and good people. And I'm glad that if nothing else, hopefully all of us, right, we're able to make some money with Canaan, with the share price, right, popping up quite substantially from the time I mentioned it, well below $1 a share. In the case of Bitfarms, hey, I think the stock can certainly stay above $1 a share. I think at this point I'd be shocked if it were to go down below $1 a share. But as I've said before, the accelerant to the share price is going to have to come from, I think, a customer. It sucks, right? I wish it could be from something else. I wish it could just be from raising more capital. Hey, if the company could go into the market, raise $1 billion tomorrow, right? 10 billion, 100 billion, whatever, and the share price would just explode up, well, then the company could do that all day. But I think at some point the market is going to want to see a customer. And that's what I certainly want to see, and I'm sure you'd like to see it as well. All right. I think that's going to be all for today. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a great October, and I do anticipate speaking with you again in the very near future. Okay, my friend, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll definitely talk to each other again soon.